Hey everybody, Dustin Schmidt back here again, and today I've got some news. I bought a new camera recently, Alexa Mini. Let's talk about it. So just a little bit of storytelling to kick this off. Let's back up a little bit to the start of this whole process, and let me tell you a little bit about how the Alexa Mini kind of came into my view and how I picked this camera up. So I'm a pretty big frequenter of various forums that are online, one of which being Red User. I own a Red Komodo. That's a camera that I've used here for a couple of years now. And so I always like to just stay up to date on the things that are going on within that community. So a while back on Red User, there was somebody who was selling an Alexa SXT, which is an amazing camera, phenomenal camera. It's several years old now, but basically an Alexa Mini in a much larger body, has more ports, things like that. I want to say it was selling for somewhere around maybe 7-8 grand, something like that. Which, if you know anything about Alexas, you know that when that camera came out, it was somewhere around $40,000 at least. I'd have to go look, but anyway, phenomenal deal for that camera. And I looked at it and thought really hard about picking it up because, like probably a lot of you on here, I've always been a bit fascinated about the Alexa and its image and just the reputation that that camera and that brand has. They have a well-deserved reputation for being at the peak of camera brands, and there's some other brands that are up there, but Alexa, I think anyone could argue, is at the top as well. But it wasn't the right camera for me at the time for various reasons. But I'm always keeping an eye on that forum. So, listings come and go. People sell Red cameras on there. People sell other gear. They sell lenses. And sometimes people will sell other high-end cameras because they know that the people that are on that forum are looking for that kind of stuff. So I'm always keeping an eye out. And so months back, I saw somebody selling not one, not two, but I think 3 Alexa Minis at the same time on there. It's the same guy that was selling the SXT, and we'll get to him in a little bit. And originally they were selling for maybe around 17 to 19K. So a few months go by, and I think the listings are there, but you don't hear much about it. And he gets back on and announces a price cut on the Minis down to $13,500. So now I'm extremely intrigued because now you can get an Alexa Mini for $13,500. Now, this is not a small sum of money. I realize that. And there's a ton of people on here who are hearing that and thinking, I would never spend that much on a camera. And I was definitely in that camp. I have previously worked with a lot of much cheaper cameras and camera systems. So one of the things that I've been looking to do lately is kind of take the images that I make to another level. And there's a lot of ways to do that, and the camera is only one small part of that. And I realize that, but it is a part of it. And I would argue a pretty decently large part, along with all the other things that go with it. And so when I saw the Mini come up at that reduced price, it really piqued my interest. And I thought maybe now is the time to get into a used Alexa Mini. So before I get into that a little bit, I want you to do something for me. I want you to take a minute here and I want you to go Google the name Gregory Lunsgaard. What you're going to find is that Greg Lunsgaard is probably one of the most prolific, experienced Hollywood Steadicam operators, director of photography that you will ever find when it comes to people working in Hollywood. Greg Lunsgaard was the one selling this camera. Now, I wasn't super familiar with Greg's body of work, but when I did a little bit of research, saw who it was, because I always like to see, forums can be sketchy places, and you want to be careful of who you're dealing with on there. Are they real people? Are they reputable people? And so I'm embarrassed to say I did not know the full back catalog of the things that Greg Lunsgaard has done. So Greg has been involved in a significant number of high-profile films over the years, and so let me just give you a couple of these so you can see what we're talking about here. Risky Business, The Color of Money, Major League, Uncle Buck, Home Alone for crying out loud, Backdraft, Lethal Weapon 3, Far and Away, True Romance, Speed, Jerry Maguire, Contact, The Devil's Advocate, U.S. Marshals, City of Angels, Mission Impossible 2, Castaway, Minority Report, The Last Samurai, Drive, Men in Black, etc., etc., etc. And he shot a bunch of TV series and a bunch of other things along with that. So safe to say, Greg has been around the block a few times. So once I had seen the full, his full catalog of all the things that Greg had done, I felt confident that you're dealing with somebody who's a professional here, and I was willing to send some money, over wire, through the interwebs of the banking system, over to Greg to get this deal done. And I will say, without getting too deep into it, Greg was fantastic to deal with, real gentleman and a true professional, and that was a great experience. And was excited to get this camera from him. So anyway, I just think that's a cool story about Greg and all the stuff that he's done. He doesn't need me pumping his tires. He's done enough stuff over the years. I just thought that was cool. I think you should go check out some of his work and just realize the amount and scope of stuff that he's been on, and really kind of appreciate all the different craftsmen and women that are a part of making these big movies that you may never have heard of. So let's get a little bit into the whys, right? Why would anybody buy an Alexa Mini in 2025? And I think number one, the first thing that would probably come up is the image. I think the Alexa Mini arguably still has one of the best images that you can get here still in 2025. And this is from a camera that came out, over a decade ago. You would still be hard pressed to find something that captures a better image than this. So if the quality of the image is important to you, and it is important to me, it's hard to go wrong there. If you look at a lot of things that are being shot and coming out right now, whether that's Hollywood, independent film, whatever, a lot of them are still shot on the Alexa Mini to this day. For people that don't have the budget to maybe get the LF or the Alexa 35, or they don't want to go Sony or high-end Red or some of that stuff, the Alexa Mini still works all the time. I think another one's probably reliability. Arri is known for having extremely reliable, robust cameras and equipment. The Mini came out in 2015. So at this point, it's been 10 years since the Mini's been out. And I don't know exactly what year this Mini was produced, but it's still running like a champ. The one that I bought has over 6,000 hours on it. It's not as bad as some Minis that are out there, and not as good as others. I think you'll usually see them for sale for anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000 hours. But I think it speaks a lot to the quality of this, for how many years it's been out, how many hours it has on it, and how well it runs. It still runs flawlessly. And this is definitely a camera that was used. So from what I understand from reading through some of Greg's messages and some of his postings and things like that, this was one of many cameras that he was using on a series that he was shooting, Hawaii Five-0, the reboot of that show, which was being filmed, the last, I guess, decade or so, out in Hawaii. And this was one of the cameras that were on Hawaii Five-0. And he shot it along with, I think, 2 other Minis and the SXT for a while. So he had about 4 cameras, just himself, that I know were working on that show. And I'm not sure what he's moved on to now, but he was offloading some of that inventory. So it's got a lot of hours on it, and it was used in a robust production environment, and is still in really great shape. And when he sent it along to me, I think it had been recently at Panavision, and they had given it a clean bill of health. And again, it's working great for me. I will say that a lot of the stuff they say about Arri is true. It's a very easy camera to operate. The menus are very straightforward. It's easy to get around. It's a dead simple camera. But it is also a very advanced camera. It has a lot of deep integration with a lot of high-end products and things that you can do with it, with metadata, with lensing, with follow focus, all kinds of stuff that tie in with that ecosystem. So it's extremely well thought out, robust, and it has a long history behind it of being used in high-end productions and making those types of things easy. So now there are a few things that the Alexa Mini is not. It is not the smallest camera out there. It's still small. If you strip it down and try to keep it as lightweight as possible, you can do that. And I actually did strip it down. I have put it on a gimbal. It will actually balance on my RS3 Pro, and is usable in that sense. But it is not the lightest camera when fully built out. The rig that I currently have, the way I have it built right now, I want to say is right around 22.5 pounds. So that is a decently large camera. But that is with everything on it, kind of all the bells and whistles. You wouldn't have to build it this large. There's a lot of ways to make it smaller than the way I currently have it. The way I have it set up right now is more of a tripod kind of setup, or on an easy rig if you're using like a Vario 5 or something like that. Let's get a little bit into the cost, because I think that is important and extremely relevant when you're talking about this camera or any camera. Now, the base setup that I bought this camera for was $13,500. Again, that is a lot of money, a lot of money. And what I got for that was almost a fully working camera package. There's a couple things I didn't get. I didn't get media with it, and I didn't get a battery system for it. So I had to buy ARRI certified CFast 2.0 cards, and I bought two of the larger ones, the 512 gigabytes. They are especially ARRI certified, and if you try to use other 512 gigabyte CFast cards that are not ARRI certified, they will not work in the camera. It won't even give you just like a, hey, we don't certify this card, be careful. It just flat out will not run those cards. And I know because I have a couple of those, because I also own a Red Komodo, it takes CFast 2.0. I had some SanDisk 512 gigabyte cards for those. They did not work. So, and I knew that going into it. That was kind of a kick in the teeth because those cards are not cheap. And I had to buy 512 gigabyte cards that are ARRI certified. So 512 card, only the one that's certified works. I bought two of those. Those were not cheap, nor were they easy to find, but I did buy them used. So those cards cost me probably $800 a piece, again, buying used. So there's about an extra $1,600 onto the cost of the 13.5. So I'm going to break down all these costs for you. You can see what it cost. Now, if you wanted to buy 256 gig cards or 128 gigabyte cards, there are a lot more of those that work in the Mini and are cheaper to get. But I just wanted to have longer run times, be switching out cards a lot less, and so I went for the bigger cards. It's a personal choice. It just works better for me and the type of work that I do. And then I needed to buy a way to get power into the camera. Now the camera did come with the 3-pin XLR to 3-pin XLR cables. So if you had something that you could hook up to that, then you could run the camera that way. I did end up buying a cheap, AC power source off the internet. Not the most expensive one, kind of a cheaper one off Amazon that was rated for the power. It does work, and it continues to work, but that was kind of a stopgap while I waited on a few things to come in. What I ultimately decided to do was buy the ARRI Bebob V-mount plate, which is their ARRI certified plate. It has all the different ports on it, has 2-pin and 3-pin and USB outputs and DTAP and all kinds of stuff on there, and is made by them. And so I knew it would be a foolproof system for this. A lot of people buy wooden camera, they'll use Tilta. There's other options out there. If you wanted to, you could just buy a cheap DTAP to ARRI Power N cord. I actually had that as a stopgap for a little while too. And those can be a lot cheaper. But I wanted to get, if I was going to buy into this system, I was going to get something that I knew was going to work and be robust, and I wouldn't have any issues with down the road. And so ultimately, I decided to buy the ARRI version for that because I knew it would last and I wouldn't have any issues with it. That was also not cheap. And it also took about 2 weeks to get delivered. I looked everywhere, nobody had it in stock. Had to order it. I guess ARRI is literally building these as you order them. I don't know. But it took a little over 2 weeks to get that built and delivered. But it was worth it. I love that power source and that system. A couple other little things I got. I got the ARRI RAB rear accessory bracket. That's the little part, the handle that comes off the back that you usually see. And then I also bought their mounting bracket for their battery plate to mount onto the rear accessory bracket. So that was just another little clamp that was $300 that interfaces with that. So there's another, cha-ching dollars that are kind of adding up to get this going. Again, you could do this for cheaper, but what I'm trying to do is minimize friction when I'm on set, make sure everything's going to work and I'm not going to have any problems. And sometimes you have to spend a little more money to do that. I don't want to be on set with a client and have my, $30 Amazon cable short out, and next thing you know, I don't have power to the camera. That's not the kind of business that I'm trying to run. So you buy once, cry once, get the good stuff, and it'll last for a career. I also picked up a couple other little accessories. I got the Routworks side plate, so I would have a little more real estate over there to mount stuff, like audio solutions to help get audio into the Mini, which is a whole other topic that we'll get into later. Place to mount the Teradek, place to mount, motors and things like that for focus. I picked up the Routworks Cube Bar, which is a little 19 mil bar they have that screws into the side and allows you to run focus motors off of it so that you don't have to run them off like a 15 mil lightweight on the bottom. And that just kind of frees up more real estate, simplifies things in my mind, and reduces weight a little bit. And so that's something else that I got, that I've got my Tilta nucleus motor running off of. There's some other little bits and bobs on this that I picked up. I'll probably do a breakdown of every little thing that's on this camera here after this. So I won't get too deep into it now. But so if you thought 13.5 was a lot of money, now I add on that extra money. So yeah, that's a little bit of a kick in the teeth for a business, but still less than some of the options that are out there. Less than what I would see something like a Sony Burano, which is really hot right now. Less than what that camera's going for. That camera sells new for around 20K. Less than, say, Red V-Raptor X, which is even used, if you get the V-Raptor used, is around, anywhere from 18 to 20K. The X is more like 24, I think, 25. Cheaper than those cameras. Cheaper than, a Venice 1 package is probably going for somewhere around 15 to 20K if you can find those with the raw module. And the Venice 2, more than that because it's still, the newer camera. And then, of course, like an Alexa LF or the 35, again, more than that. So at that tier of top-level cameras, I think I came out pretty good as far as overall cost and usability for where my package sits. So one of the big questions people might have about the Mini is, why not just rent? I see that come up all the time when it comes to cameras. People are like, marry your lenses, date your cameras, just rent the camera you need for the job, etc. I agree with that you should use what the job needs or what you can afford or all those things. As far as renting goes, there is not a rental market in Oklahoma City where I live. You can't just pop off to the rental house and rent any number of, 100 Alexa Minis or LFs or Venices or whatever that are just sitting in a rental house. That doesn't exist here. It's not New York or LA or Atlanta or Chicago or any of these places that maybe have that type of ecosystem. We just don't have that here. Maybe you could find one through somebody else that has one. There are a couple other owners of Minis in Oklahoma City. I'm aware of one or two, but they're really more kind of like owner operators. It's not something that you can just get anytime you need from a rental house. And on that same note of renting out gear, it's not a camera that I'm actually going to look to turn around and rent, so to speak, to anybody else. I'm a shooter first and foremost. I'm not a rental house. There's a lot of things associated with renting any kind of gear when it comes to insurance and theft and all that kind of stuff, and I don't want to deal with any of that. So for the most part, I only loan gear occasionally or rent it to people that I know very well. So this is not going to be a money maker from a rental perspective where I'm going to send it out on ShareGrid or something like that. I will use it on all the shoots that I go on, and I will charge a fee to bring the camera on shoots, so it will make money that way, but it's not a rental type of item. The benefits of being an owner-operator, I think, are pretty wide, as opposed to renting gear. Anytime I need to go shoot something, I just grab the camera, pick it up, and I go. Again, key for the market and the area that I live in. It also means that I can flex a little bit in terms of maybe my rate, the rate the gear goes out at, all those types of things. I always try to charge what it takes to get the job done, but it gives me some more leeway to shoot projects that I want to shoot, and make budgets work sometimes in creative ways because I own gear and I can work that in with my rate. Let's talk about other cinema cameras on the market and compare those to the Mini right now. Again, I still think the Mini has right up there with class leading dynamic range. So you're going to get a picture that's as good as almost anything that's out there. So that's key. It does not have, a super high resolution. It is a 4K upscaled camera where it takes the internal pixels and it will upscale those to 4K if you need a 4K deliverable. And that was kind of key for me on deciding on the Mini versus something like maybe the Alexa OG or some of the older cameras, which arguably have equal dynamic range and as good of an image, but they don't have the resolution. I am not chasing or in search of more resolution. Yes, you can see it on a screen at 200% or 400%. Yes, you can see those additional pixels. No, I do not think that shows up as much in real life when people are watching stuff on a 1080p television or on the internet or on their phones or things like that. I don't think you can tell as much. And that's why I think the image out of the Mini is going to be relevant for many years to come until everybody has 8K TVs and broadcast is going out in 8K. A lot of people don't know this. Some channels, major network television still goes out in 720p. So, and nobody's complaining about, watching that on their screens at home. If you're going to buy a camera like the Mini, you need to take into account all the things that support a camera like this. Like I mentioned earlier, the media, the battery life, the support systems that go around it, your tripod or your easy rig or how you're going to fly it on a gimbal, how you're going to power it for a day. It's a relatively power hungry camera compared to a lot of other cameras out there. Do you have the number of batteries and things to support that? Luckily for me, I already had all those things. I've been shooting for a long time. All that stuff's been built up. If you were just going to jump out of the gate and decide you were going to upgrade and buy a Mini while you were rocking your, Manfrotto 501 tripod head or whatever that is, that's probably a bad decision. You're not thinking about the full breadth and width of what you need to do to operate this camera. So this is kind of just a first look at jumping into the Alexa system and with the Mini. I've shot a couple small projects on it so far, not enough to give like a big thorough review about stuff that maybe is annoying to me or bothers me or tips and things that I've learned. I'll be doing quite a few, hopefully, follow-up videos on it. So that's really kind of the start of this whole conversation. If you've got questions, leave them down in the comments. I'll be happy to answer any of that stuff. I love having conversations down there. And that's it for me. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.